Hi, I'm Stephen Rodneski from GetRealOnTaxReform.info. At first glance, the Tea Party and the 99% groups seem so different, yet they are really very much alike. They are both like canaries in the coal mines that alerted the miners when the poisons had reached a dangerous level. Members of both groups are aware that something is really wrong and are actively trying to warn us. They both seethe with anger as they sense what is coming if we don't act. But the Tea Party has been convinced that all the troubles stem from too much government that coddles the poor. The 99% think that everyone making $250,000 a year is a greedy fat cat. The facts support neither contention. Both the 99% and the Tea Party have been misinformed and are being deliberately pitted against each other. What if they were clear about what was happening? What if they were working together? Now, I don't envision members of the two groups sitting around a campfire together singing Kumbaya. Rather, I mean the groups making a coordinated effort to rein in the common enemy that is destroying our great country. Congress and the lobbying system that has bought the blind loyalty of our congresspeople. Then we would have a chance to really turn the current situation around. Now, most of us realize Congress has always put its members' needs above that of we the people in shameless ways, such as railing against the greed and overreach of unions while voting themselves a health benefit and retirement package that no union boss in the country would consider foisting on their employers. But we let them get away with it. Since it affects only a few thousand past and current congressional office holders, the total cost can be buried among the other massive transgressions against their constituents. However, the scale of ineptitude that Congress is now working on is literally sending the country down a path of destruction. There are copies of all the main tables presented in this video at www.getrealontaxreform.info/groups.htm. Now, I know charts and tables are boring to most of us, but unless we analyze the actual facts regarding what has already happened, all we are relying on is other people's agendas packaged in slick sound bites. One of the tables that you can download is called Comparison of Specific Tax Returns 1976 through 2008. Let's take a look at that information right now. As you can see, it is a summary of 6 different years: 1976, 1992, 1996, 2000, 2004, and 2008. These are snapshots of each year listed. For those interested in verifying the data, the full tables for each year are also available. They are at www.getrealontaxreform.info/tables.htm. For each year, there is information on the number of filers, the reported income from all individual tax returns, the total tax collected. Looking at 2008, the same information was given for various groups, including the bottom 41% of filers who made under $25,000, the middle class who made between $25,000 and almost $50,000, were the next 24% of filers, the rich 33% who made between $50,000 and $500,000, and the super rich 1/4% who made over $1 million. For the other 5 years, the same groups were summarized after adjusting for inflation and population growth. There is information on how much each member of the group made on average, plus how much each member of the group made on average after income tax was paid. I call the 65% of the tax filers, which include the middle class and the poor, simply as the non-rich. Over the entire 1976 to 2008 time period, the after-tax income of the non-rich has consistently decreased. After 32 years, they have less money to spend. No trickle down here. So if the poor are taking all the money from the rich, I don't know where they are putting it. By the way, one of the latest rationalizations being used in Congress by those who are trying to justify more tax breaks for the super rich point out that nearly 1/2 of the tax filers pay no income tax. Let's look at the clever trick the non-rich use to get out of paying income tax. Every tax filer, including the super rich, get to take a standard deduction of about $5,500 if they are alone, or about $11,000 if they file jointly. Every tax filer gets to deduct a $3,500 exemption for themselves and each dependent they are supporting. As a nation, don't most of us agree that a married couple raising 2 children needs the first $25,000 they earn to support themselves and their family? We give it to the super rich. That's great. But if the bottom 41% of the population are averaging less than $9,000 in income, they are beating the system through poverty. How many of you want to have that kind of limited income? Now, I agree that a $25,000 deduction is chump change to the super rich making millions, but for the middle class earning $25,000 to $50,000, and even most of the rich who earn $50,000 to $500,000, those type of deductions or their counterpart of itemized deductions do protect them from much higher tax rates. Reducing or eliminating these built-in deductions in an effort to force the poor to pay more income tax will backfire on the rich and the middle class. It will cost them much more in taxes than the government will get through reducing the same discounts for the poor who make so little. Of course, the politicians aren't really planning to cut the standard deductions and or exemptions. It's just another BS diversionary ploy. They've regularly increased these deductions by about $50 a year to pretend to compensate for inflation. One of my favorite stories that my mother Kay enjoys telling is about her big brother Buster. Now, she grew up in rural Alabama during the Depression, so money was very scarce. Whenever Buster wanted my mother to do a chore for him, he would say, "Do X and I'll give you a quarter." Kay, who adored Buster, would immediately launch into the chore. Once it was done, she would run back to Buster and say, "I did it, where's my quarter?" Buster would give a familiar grin, and with a wave of his hands he'd say, "A quarter down the road." She knew that this was always his response, but she played along just for fun. Every couple of years, the politicians come around and say, "Vote for me, and I'll reduce spending and cut your taxes." Every time they seem to make matters worse for one main reason. If you are part of the 99.4% who make $500,000 or less, you are always going to be sucking hind tit because of a combination of fear and greed. The politicians are always going to give first priority to the super rich and just end up giving you a quarter down the road. I know that the supply siders think that giving people more money to spend is a valuable boost to our economy, which positively affects tax revenue. But that mainly applies to money available to the 99.4%, whose spending activity is directly proportional to their current cash flow. As you can see, the share of revenue going to that group keeps diminishing, while the share of income going to the super rich keeps increasing. Unlike most of us, the spending habits of the super rich are not directly tied to their weekly or monthly income. So while cutting taxes on the 99.4% would stimulate economic activity and revenue growth, every modest tax cut for the 99.4% over the past 30 years has been piggybacked with a larger tax cut for the super rich. That has sabotaged the efforts. In addition, Congress has passed other tax cuts that give virtually all of their benefit just to the super rich, such as long-term capital gains tax rate deductions, which I talked about in the first video. When you remove nearly $200 billion per year from the revenue stream just to please the super rich, there is no way the economy can really right itself, which is why our deficit keeps rising because of unbridled trickle-down economics. Over the entire 30-year period, while the income of the rich did increase slightly because of their ability to command better incomes rather than from real tax cuts, their share of the pie stayed almost stagnant. While the rich were averaging 1.88 times the income of the bottom 99.4% in 1976, their share of after-tax income has only increased to 2.12 times the income of the bottom 99.4% after 30 years. Not much trickle down there. Remember that together the non-rich, which includes what's left of the middle class, and the rich filers who make up the 99.4% of all filers in any given year. When we look at what happened to the super rich, who make up less than 1/4% of filers, we see a much different outcome. Back in 1976, this group already had an after-tax income of more than 11 times the income of the bottom 99.4%. By 2008, this tiny group was getting nearly 60 times the after-tax income of the other 99.4%. I guess we better rename this phenomenon the trickle-down economics. The entire justification for giving most of the tax cuts to the super rich was a sham. Check out the video, How to Drown in the Rising Tide, and see for yourself. The super rich making up less than 1/4% of tax filers, but they now carry a big stick. Of the $6 trillion of income reported in 2008, $1 trillion went to the super rich. A great deal of that income came from their own talents, but their average after-tax income of $2,574,000 was certainly helped by the fact that they each paid an average of $549,000 less in income tax than they would have in 1976 on the same amount of income. As a group, the super rich saved over $176 billion in 2008 alone. It is this loss of about $176 billion in revenue each year that has contributed more than any other factor to our current deficit upheaval. So you see, 99%ers, it's not the rich who make up to $500,000 that are causing the problems. the average after-tax income of the rich has only increased about $17,000 after 30 years of trickle-down economics. Attention, Tea Party faithful. It's not the middle class or poor that are holding you back and taking all the fruits of your hard work. The average after-tax income of the poor has gone from about $12,600 in 1976 down to about $8,600 in 2008 once we adjust for inflation. The average after-tax income of the middle class went from $36,000 in 1976 to about $34,000 in 2008. Frankly, it's not even most of the super rich who have conspired to shake down the rest of us. They are merely taking advantage of the rules that have been put into place and would honor changes that were initiated to bring back some sanity to our progressive tax system, because they are in the best position to benefit long run from a return to a robust and growing economy. But Congress did not birth and sustain this 30-year tax nightmare out of the kindness of their heart. They were lobbied and bribed by some of the super rich who will do anything to keep getting what they want, no matter how wealthy they become. The one thing that the greediest of the super rich keep wanting is more. The agenda of these wannabe rulers is outlined in Chapter 9 of my book, Conning the Rich, the Great American Fraud. We are losing our democratic republic as we have morphed into a plutocracy over the last 30 years. Now that the Supreme Court jesters have given license to the super rich to use this massive wealth they have acquired to force their legislative agenda onto us, our faltering two-party system may finally succumb. How sad that our 250-year-old exodus from life under the oligarchy of King George has brought us to the doorstep of an oligarchy under King Cash. Unfortunately, the $150 to $176 trillion that the super rich have been adding to their war chest each year through special tax breaks might already be too much of an obstacle for anyone to prevent the final hijacking of the American government. The majority in Congress have already decided that it is far easier to kiss the ring of the lobbyists funded by the super rich and garner $1 million in support than to try to deal with 10,000 individuals to garner $100 from each. As we know, that when it comes to self-preservation, Congress is all about efficiency. Now that the lobbyists for the super rich can threaten an already corrupted Congress with the fire and brimstone of super PAC money working against any candidate who does not toe the line, what will prevent their complete capitulation? There is only one possibility. If Congress was assured of a massive retaliation from the 99.4% of the voting public that they are selling out, the fear might be enough for Congress to finally stand up to the super rich. I'm begging the members of both the Tea Party and the 99% to do one thing before you become too attached to the emotional baggage that keeps your respective groups divided. Take about an hour and look at the first 4 15-minute videos on YouTube at the Get Real on Tax Reform page. I would love to promise you'll see beautiful women and edge-of-your-seat action sequences, but I cannot. Since there are no super PACs and no super rich benefactors funding presentation of this information, you will see less than perfect video productions featuring a man over 60 presenting facts and data that seem to have been lost or suppressed over the years. I know about an hour is a big commitment in this era of instant sound bites, but not compared with what you have already committed to doing. What is an hour compared to spending days marching in the streets against the top 1%, or attending rallies against excess taxes and government spending? Intelligent men can only make informed decisions when exposed to the truth about the way things are, not how our bias wants us to believe. If only both of your groups could let go of the misinformation that you have been fed, oh, what amazing things you could do together. Thank you for your time, and God bless America.